Right, g'day guys, Sunny Moo here. Today I just want to talk to you a little bit about self-worth. I am sorry about the delay on the video, but I'm glad to be finally, hopefully, getting there. Sorry if my cat meows through this whole thing. So first off, before we define anything, I just want you to picture your life if you had zero anxiety. So every anxiety that you currently have, all of that stress is just gone. It's all lifted. When I picture this, I sort of see myself and my friends, relaxing, playing board games. We're very happy, we're stress-free. I see a very carefree life, just sort of skipping through, happy as Larry, It's just a life without that cloud of fear, I suppose. And when I first picture that, I think it's something very positive. But then I want to change that. When you think about that, let's just change the term anxiety with the term motivation or preparedness. And when I think about losing all of that, I think about running late for work, not studying for exams. I think about giving up on Dark Souls bosses after one attempt. I think about not practicing before gigs and then completely stuffing it up. All these things that, are quietly driven by preparedness or anxiety. Stick with me, it'll work. So obviously, the choice is there to decide that everything's meaningless, nothing matters, and what's the point anyway? And that, that lifts a lot of stress. It will, because if nothing matters, then there's nothing to worry about. But if you're not okay with having a nihilistic, meaningless existence, and you actually want, love and meaningful experiences and to live a life full of the ups and downs, as all lives are, then you're going to need that motivation. You're going to need the preparedness, and you're going to need to care. And it's hard, because it's difficult enough caring about yourself with anxiety, because it's like, all right, not only am I stressed about where I am now, I'm stressed about where I'm going to be in a day and in a year and in 10 years, and I'm stressed about my being as an entirety. But then you've got your empathy, so you're sort of stressing about all the people closest to you, your friends, your family. And then it spreads further than that, because we're constantly worrying about where society as a whole is going. So developing this care for, I suppose, everyone and everything, and developing a sense of that it is your social responsibility to do something good. It leaves you extremely stressed, but at least you're not numb. And that's what creates all these really joyful, meaningful experiences that we love so much, because if we didn't work so hard for them and they weren't so scary and difficult, I don't think they'd feel as great as they do. Alright, so we'll go back. I just want to clarify that preparedness and anxiety are not the same thing. I was replacing your sort of idea of anxiety with preparedness just to prove a point. So when I was in second or third year university, I was in a psych class. This dude came in, and he was a sports psychologist, and straight away I was like, okay, this isn't my interest, but whatever. And he brought up a video of a bunch of footballers preparing for their grand final. And, it showed all the sort of normal physiological changes that you'd assume to happen before a grand final. They were sort of pacing back and forth, they were biting their nails, their heart races increased, everything like that. But they weren't freaking out, and he kept on bringing up these graphs side by side of these footballers before their grand final and something else, and he didn't tell us what the something else was. And so I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, right, I don't care, what's the point? So eventually he brings up the name for the other graphs, and it's what happens in patients with social anxiety disorders while they're around people. And it was pretty much biologically the exact same response. Like the heart rate, the pupils dilating, pacing, nail biting, most of it was pretty much the exact same physiological response. The difference between the footballers and the people that had social anxiety is that the footballers knew why they were anxious. They knew why their body was preparing, because it had something to prepare for. They were going into a battle of sorts, if you will, the grand final. So when you're on a public bus and your phone rings out loud and it's Gwen Stefani's Hollaback Girl and everyone turns around and looks at you like you're a nutter, your body goes into that same reaction because you tend to have anxiety. It's just preparing you for a battle that realistically you don't have to fight. So you don't have to view it as, oh my goodness, this terror pit is going to control my life. You can view it as, little mate in primary school trying to help you that doesn't quite know how to help, but he's there anyway. He's present, he's trying to help, he's not doing a good job, but just let him sit there, let him try to help you. Because sometimes this anxiety is what we need to push us into doing things. You have a crush on someone, and that moment just before you ask them to come see a movie with you or go out with you, it's terrifying. It is so, so scary. That moment that you're about to go up and accept an award on stage, you're shitting yourself. All those moments that make us feel absolutely amazing are all the moments that make us feel absolutely petrified. And I think life's supposed to be set up that way. I was going to flip back. I've got printed pages here to try to keep me... I've gone completely off them though and just gone on a little tangent, but that's fine. So upon watching the videos of these footy dudes and looking at all the ECGs and everything like that, I was like, alright, so what's the difference then if these guys, physiologically they're feeling relatively the same thing as I do when I'm in a crowded place, yet they're standing upright, they're talking fine, they seem fine, and when I feel that, I'm a crying mess. So I'm like, alright, there's got to be a difference here, and while I think the difference is knowing the battle you're going into, I think a lot of it is the self-talk, because they were speaking encouragingly, not just to themselves, but to their whole team in these videos. They were saying, like, you got this, you guys are going to win. You've heard, like, it's locker room talk. It's really, really encouraging, and I think it needs to be that way to counteract those anxious feelings. So in our day-to-day life, I think if you add that positive self-talk, whether or not you're facing a grand final or you're facing just going to the grocery store, add the bit of self-talk on there. Let yourself know, acknowledge the anxiety. Let yourself feel it. Be like, it's here. It doesn't really need to be here right now. I'm not going to drown in the avocados or whatever. But it's there, and it's probably not going to go anywhere at that time. But adding, I hate this so much and I hate my life on top of it is going to make it feel a hell of a lot worse than just saying, I've got the uncomfortables in my tummy again. I'm just going to try to get on with it, because you sort of know that it's not anxiety that's needed right now. And as much as I know, easier said than done, which is exactly what I said to the sports psych guy when he came into our class and sort of said this was the same thing. And this was a few years ago now, and upon practicing, like, if you know me, you'll know I am a very anxious creature. If you don't, I have a lot of anxiety about a lot of things. But through practicing the self-talk, and, like, I'm talking really cringy self-talk, like, good morning, Molly, I love you. Fully, like, really, really play it up. Like, be your own best friend. Talk yourself through everything. You might feel a little bit crazy, but feeling a little bit crazy and giggling about talking to yourself is better than feeling horrifyingly scared all the time. So, now that we're past that little anxiety rant, I know that sort of went off the purpose of this video, but I thought it was important just because, one, the realization from that video changed my life a little bit, because it just made it apparent that anxiety wasn't something that everyone else doesn't have and that is ruining my life. It's just my brain and my emotions aren't as good at applying anxiety to where it needs to be and not applying it too much to where it doesn't need to be. And that's fine, and it all takes a lot of, proper practice. And a few years down the track now, I can say I'm getting there. Like, I can go out in public, I can talk to people. I'm making a video on the internet right now. That's not to say there's not days that I don't cry in my room all day, because there is. It's just understanding that anxiety doesn't have to control your entire life, and it doesn't make you a lesser person than anyone else. It just makes you stronger for fighting through it. So let's jump straight into self-worth. I think self-worth and self-respect goes pretty hand in hand with anxiety, just because I think as soon as our self-worth or sense of what we deserve drops, our anxiety increases. Same with depressive symptoms. I think basically self-worth is literally just like what you think about the person you are becoming. So it's quite obvious why anxiety can have an effect on it, because, if you're too anxious to do certain things that you really want to do, it sort of feels like anxiety is stopping you from being the person you're supposed to be. But again, with practice, you can get through it eventually. But I think our illnesses and our mistakes and our peaks and troughs through life aren't exactly wholly what make us who we are. I think we have a choice. I think we all have a very strong choice. And I think if you really sit back and watch people in their day-to-day lives, you can see them making those choices. People will choose to go towards compassion, or they'll choose towards heartlessness. Like, they'll choose to be mean, or they'll choose to be kind. They'll choose to wear yellow, or they'll choose to wear black. It's all that sort of thing. Not saying black is a negative colour to wear. Not saying that yellow is a negative colour to wear. Just examples. So I feel like in 2019, just given the way the world is now, it's very hard to maintain a healthy sense of self-worth. Even just with social media, you can use social media as the example alone. It's very hard because we're constantly being communicated at that we're not good enough and we need to buy certain items to become good enough. And it's like everything's communicated as a massive competition, and it just shouldn't be. Like, we're all this collective barrel of babies that need to just be nice to each other, and we are fighting against a world. It doesn't matter who's doing it. We're fighting against a bunch of people that are telling us you need to be fit but not too fit, you need to be this, you need to be that, you need to be tall but not too tall, and short but not too short, you need to be strong but not mean, and you need to be all of these things. You need a house, there's just so much. Everything. Turn on your TV, you'll find 100 different things telling you what you need to make you better or make you worthy. And it's all just bullshit. And we know that. So why does it still affect us now? Like, I love my friends and my family. I'm very, very close to them, and I can very confidently say that the people I surround myself with are extremely good people. They're extremely worthy people, and they deserve all of the respect in the world. But I watch them walk around every day, sort of, comparing themselves to others and feeling a bit down on themselves and not feeling adequate, I guess. And it sucks, and it makes me wonder why that happens. But I think it is all just the way the world is set up. Like, I know that my friends are compassionate and kind and loving and caring, but it is all marketed as a giant competition. So if you're not winning, you feel like you're losing, but no one wins, and no one really knows what winning is anyway. So there's not really a point of working towards that. So what do you do when your self-worth is all fucked up? And you're like, uh-oh, I've acted in a way that I don't agree with, and I'm full of regret. And I guess in those cases, all you can do is change. You can identify, like, there's two things you can do when you've got a problem. It's either change the way you look at it, or change what you've done and change your actions in the situation. And if you really look at a situation and you can see that you've done something wrong, change your behaviour. Don't justify it. Don't change your perception to justify bad behaviour. That's when you get really, really low self-worth. If you deep down know that you are not being who you want to be and not treating people the way you want to treat people, you will lead yourself to depression. It happens so often. And that's not in like a be nice or you'll get really sad. That's in like it's proven. It even if your self-knowledge, like your moral compass, I suppose, dictates you to be more self-centered and more introverted and not care that much about the outside world, do that. Like, follow your compass. And obviously there's laws and everything to prevent us doing things that are well outside of the norm. But I think the main way to keep... Sorry, I've had a mental blank. I think the main way to keep your own sense of self-worth sort of up is to make sure you're not putting it on things that really don't matter. Like, don't judge it by your Instagram followers. Don't do that. Don't judge it by your likes on Facebook. Who gives a fuck about your selfies? Who cares about your kill streak on COD? Like, Fortnite, doesn't matter. Apex, doesn't matter. Like, Overwatch, doesn't matter. It's all fun. They're all really fun distractions, but none of them make us who we are. It just doesn't. It doesn't matter if you can hit headshots cross map. No one cares. People care. That's a lie. Even I care. But they don't care enough for that to change who you are as a person. And it should never change who you are as a person. None of that stuff should change who you are as a person. And if you're finding that you know, you really do feel quite worthless in this world, and that you're not happy with the choices that you've made and the path that you're walking, it's not too late to change it. Like, things suck, and you can't take back the things that suck, and they'll always hurt, and that in itself is awful, and it sucks that it's like that. But if it didn't constantly hurt, we might forget the lessons that we were supposed to learn from it originally. Everything that's painful we can add to what to do in the future. Sorry, my cat's meowing at me. Everything negative that happens in our lives, whether or not it's a lesson, as in you did something and need to learn something, it's not necessarily like that. I don't think people mean there's a lesson in everything, like everything's your fault and you should learn from it. I more mean, like, if someone really hurts you, you do learn from it. Whether or not it's that you learn to stick up for yourself stronger, whether it's that you learn to say no, whether it's that you learn to say yes. Like, there's always something that we take from it and add to our next encounter like that, I suppose. You can never not learn. Learning is really hard to turn off. So I think as long as you're focusing on learning and growing and just focusing on being the best you can actually be and really working on it, and don't act in an opposite way against it, you can slowly build self-worth despite the shit going on in the world. Because, like, realistically, there's always going to be someone with more followers and someone with more likes, someone with more money, someone with better music. They can play guitar better, they can sing better, they can harmonise better, they can make, chocolate fondue, and they can build cars, and they can do all this stuff, and you can't do any of it, and you're like, well, shit. But if you can be like, well, shit, at least I'm a good person, it's enough to fight that. It's so powerful. Like, just having the fact that I know that I'm working every single day to be a kinder person has helped me through some of the darkest times in my life. There's been times when I've questioned my existence completely and my purpose, and it's purely just been the fact that I know that I can put a smile on people's faces that keeps me here half the time. And I've grown to learn that that's not a little thing. It's not a tiny thing that's keeping me here. It's huge. That's all that matters. That's all there is. It's just connection and making people smile and trying to make this difficult path that we're all stumbling along a little bit, more involving and more inviting and a little bit more musical or colourful, or however you want it. Just sort of lifting it up a little bit, because obviously you can't go into someone's life and take away the tragedy, and you can't come into your own life and prevent any tragedy happening. It's a human life. What happens is going to happen. It's always going to be up and down. But what you can do is try to make it at least more enjoyable. We know that being kind and hugging people, giving gifts, stuff like that, releases certain endorphins that can lift mood on their own. So stuff like acts of kindness, when you're really, really that low depressed, can actually benefit your own chemical mood. Like, it can chemically lift your mood on your own. So I just want to reiterate the point in this that I said earlier about this all taking practice, because it is not a fast process, and it's not a pretty process. All of this practicing self-worth and self-love and practicing kindness and practicing, fighting off your anxieties and facing fears and everything like that, none of it happens fast, and none of it happens beautifully like it does in the movies. It's not this, you wake up in this golden ball of light and all of a sudden everything's better. It doesn't work like that. It's a series of crying in the supermarket every day until one day you can walk in and you get an ice cream and you realise that you didn't cry. And it's just those little wins that you need to take and hold on to and just keep practicing. Like, always, never stop practicing, because you're never going to stop learning. So you might as well get really, really, really good at taking care of yourself, because it's important. And you need to, and you can't take care of other people unless you take care of yourself first. So with that, I just want to read straight off the page what I wrote as a little sort of final summary for this video, because I've gone completely off my script and have just sort of rambled for 20 minutes. So I'll just read this straight off the page. This was my last little message for you guys about self-worth and feeling down and comparing yourself to others, etc. So in a world that tells you that you are not enough, you need to fight back with the knowledge that you are more than enough. You are everything. You need to be your own best friend. Now, I know that might seem impossible. You might have lived a life that you completely despise, and you might feel so much self-hatred that you could never ever love yourself again. Trust me on this one, with repetitive practice and a fuckload of tears, you can forgive yourself and those who hurt you. Not necessarily in a physical way, but internally. You can go back, learn what you needed to, and forgive the situation to move on. It takes a lot of time. I sat in front of the mirror trying to apologise to my younger self for a fair few years, and almost every single time it ended with me either feeling really silly or just crying. And then one day I felt it. I released the pain and anger and forgave myself, and a weight was lifted. Alright, just a side note. That exercise was one of the most interesting things I've ever done. It was just sitting, hand on my heart, in front of a mirror, trying to talk to me at a much younger age. And it took a long, long time for it to feel like anything. But once we got there, it was really beneficial. So sitting in front of the mirror and talking to yourself like you're a separate person, highly recommend. Feels really silly, but good for a giggle anyway. And eventually you'll be like, I am great, and I want me to have a good day, and thank you for being awesome. And you can just talk to your reflection, and it's great. Anyway, back to the reading. It's up to you how deeply you dive into this self-talk thing. It can seem a bit silly at first, but it honestly really did help me. Along with loving yourself, helping others can boost our self-worth greatly. We already touched on that. Be kind, fellas. Do want to reiterate, just do not cross your own personal barriers when trying to help friends. I know, especially for the more empathetic people, that is really, really easy to do, especially when you become quite depressed and feeling that your worth isn't as much as others. It can be easy to sort of cross our own lines to help other people because we deem that as being kind or what's right, and just never put yourself out that way. You know, your gut will tell you what's right and wrong and what you should be doing and what you shouldn't. Anyway, just saying. So finally, I just want to mention again that none of this is easy. Even when you're well on the journey to a healthy sense of self-worth and a lowered amount of anxiety, there are still going to be peaks and troughs through the whole thing. There's always going to be highs and lows in life. You just have to make sure you don't stay in the suffering parts for too long. In times when the world is completely dark and empty, and even your skin starts to feel foreign to you, notice the world, notice the bleakness of it all, the loud horns of the cars and the annoying cries of kids. Notice everything, take it all in, and then keep trying, or try something else. Find comfort in day-to-day normalities, in animals or games or cartoons or your favourite blanket, and then focus on it for as long as you need to. Once you feel like your heart is back in the right spot and the world seems slightly more colourful, try everything all over again, and be proud that you survived. Be very proud that you survived. So that's my attempt at my little self-worth video. I hope it was coherent. I'm so sorry about the delay, and I'm sorry about how unorganised this filming was, and that the sun's come out in my eyes because Australian summer. But I hope you learned something. I'll be back with another mental health related talk at some point. Leave a comment or a message if there's something that you would like to know more about. I have been reading up on bad pharmacology, so if you're interested, subscribe to my channel to learn about bad pharmacology. Alright, have a lovely day. Thanks for watching.